Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are speaking with Alan Locher. Alan is a senior public relations executive specializing in the TV, film, and tourism industries. He has worked the likes of Disney, Proctor & Gamble, and On Location Tours. And he has worked on PR campaigns for over 200 motion pictures. When the pandemic hit and wiped out the tourism industry for a year, Alan launched The Locher Room. It's an interview series talking to TV's familiar faces, and it aims to bring smiles to the TV fans around the country. Alan has since hosted almost 170 shows, and he has interviewed over 500 guests since his launch. He has also created a sub-series called Conversations with Alan, where he tackles the rise of hate, racism, and anti-Semitism that we are seeing in our country, which is so very important. Thank you for that, Alan. I am looking forward to learning more. Please tell us a little bit more about your story and moving up through the ranks in the PR industry.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I actually started as a page at ABC Television back in the mid-'80s.
Oh my goodness.
I had always wanted to be in the entertainment industry. And I was working at a health club in New Jersey, and a woman overheard me voice that I wanted to work in entertainment. And she chimed in and said, I work in HR at ABC Television. And she said they have a page program. And I was basically a sophomore in college. And that woman basically opened every door for me by just listening and suggesting being willing to help somebody else. And she helped me. I got that job as a page. That job led to working for Regis and Kathy Lee right out of college.
Oh my goodness.
It was really fun. And to be honest, it has helped me with the Locher Room. My experience there and watching those two professional hosts do their job on a daily basis really helped me to make sure I researched my guests for the Locher Room, all that type of stuff. I had gone to college for communications and didn't know that I wanted to be in PR. And because I had gotten that job through my page program with Regis and Kathy Lee, Disney syndicated them. And when Disney syndicated them, I got a job working for the show at Disney. And then shortly after, a role opened in the movie division I was 21, 22 years old, and I went to work for Walt Disney Pictures at a time that they were releasing about 60 movies a year. And that, when you said I've worked on 200 motion pictures, it's because at that time, today, no motion picture studio releases that many movies. It was during Jeffrey Katzenberg's reign when we were releasing all of the great classics: Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin, Pocahontas.
To my heart growing up. Yes.
Yeah, for a young kid, and to learn the ropes at a company like that was pretty incredible.
What a gift. What was it like working in Disney during that time?
I was single. I was hungry. I wanted to learn. Most of my evenings during the almost 8 years I was there were spent going to the movies. Literally. We would screen a movie sometimes 2, 3, 5, 6 times. So I'd see the same movie over and over again. Then we would do some incredible premieres of these motion pictures. I worked on the Pocahontas premiere in Central Park for 100,000 people.
Wow.
I led a team of 11 to do the national and local television coverage for that premiere. But we did a premiere for The Lion King at Radio City Music Hall, premiere of Beauty and the Beast at Disney World.
Great.
For that. Yeah, it really was, and really taught me an incredible amount of just an incredible learning experience for a young kid out of college who was unclear of the complete direction he wanted. And I fell in love with PR, at that job.
What do you think is the most beneficial thing that you learned while there?
Wow. Oh my God. Just working with some of the individuals that I worked with, I think just absorbing that information. Also, those large events prepare you for really almost anything. When you're working a red carpet for these movie premieres for 100,000 people and escorting some top talent, it's just in the PR business, it helps guide you, I think, to be a better PR person.
You clearly have worked on a lot of very exciting campaigns and worked on campaigns with movies that were incredibly successful. But I would like to know, out of everything that you've done, what do you feel is one or two of your greater successes, and what did you learn from it?
Wow. The Pocahontas premiere is definitely a highlight for me because I was charged with leading that team of 11 for all of the coverage. And that was national and local outlets from around the world to come set up shop in Central Park so they could actually film what was happening there. And one of the things that I actually pitched and secured was a 3-hour live show from the park that WOR did. It was the making of the Pocahontas premiere in Central Park.
Oh, very cool.
So they were doing live remotes from the park. We had done some tape pieces. So that's a big highlight. What did I learn from that? So much. It's 26 years ago, I think, last week about 5 days ago. It was June 10th, 1995.
It's real, right? When you get those.
Yeah. And for me, I grew up watching As the World Turns and Guiding Light. My mom moved here from Holland and learned to speak English watching the two shows I ended up working on.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love that. What did your mom say when you got the job?
Thank God she was alive when I got the job.
That makes me feel yes.
Yeah, it was a full circle for me because in some respect those two shows also drove my interest in entertainment. As much as I liked watching them, I started to learn where those shows were filmed and I would meet the actors back when I was a fan. And I wasn't necessarily going to be a fan. I was, of course, because I liked watching those shows, but I was also inquisitive about the entertainment business. How do you get in? What is a production coordinator job at one of those shows? Because it was before I was in college when I started doing that, but it also helped when I landed the role as the PR director, and then the actors, some of them already knew who I was.
Yeah, that's really cool. Wait, but your mom learned how to speak English watching the soap operas?
Yeah, many immigrants learned to speak. I remember, especially the time my mother moved to this country was like 1958, 59. There were only 3 networks. So your choice to watch television, if you didn't speak the language, was the daytime soaps were on all day. So many people learned to speak English that way, who moved here.
I think that's great. So maybe I should start watching the Spanish soap operas, right?
Right. And an Italian soap. Me too. I would love to learn Italian. But working there was a great experience for me too. I started out as a senior publicist. And then when my boss left the company, she got out of the business, got out of PR, and they promoted me to lead the PR department. I was responsible for a cast of 30 on each show. So juggling personalities, I basically, were representing the cast and executives on all those shows as the PR director. And it helps you to really manage personalities.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. What have you found that's helped you the most with that? Because I'm sure that applies to just helping you in life too.
100%. People used to ask, how do you do it? Because if you and I have a relationship, we have that code, but I changed that code for every person there because you just have a different relationship with each person you meet. I might be closer with one actor, one producer, one, production assistant, just by nature of the more you deal with someone in business, your relationship changes over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot to manage when you have all of those people coming at you for different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a juggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what about the flip side of that question? What a time that you had a perceived failure, if you will, or a big obstacle or challenge, and what you learned from it?
At that company or anywhere?
Anywhere in life. In general.
Challenge. Losing my job? Is that something I can say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I spent 12 and a half years working at Asda Turns and Gutting. And this is going to sound funny, but it's really not funny. On April 1st, 2009, April Fool's Day, we learned that both shows were canceled and they were going off the air.
Oh.
And Guiding Light was the longest running show in broadcast history.
The same day. That's brutal.
They were both owned by Procter and Gamble, and aired on the CBS television network, and CBS made the decision not to renew the license. Gotcha. It was crushing, and to find out it on top of that, on March 31st, I signed a lease for a new apartment. But
next day,
my husband said we're still doing it, so he was smart, and we still did it. But that was a recession in 2009. Yeah. So losing my job in 2009 was, pretty difficult. And then March of 2020, the pandemic hit and I lost my job again because travel was the first thing really hit hard, especially in New York City. A lot of On Location Tours business was group travel. And the minute it started hitting the international airwaves that a pandemic was in New York City, the calls were coming in that all of the tours were being canceled. And I've been hit twice during 2 recessions to have to go out and, find my next opportunity. Yeah. So that's been difficult and I'm working through it now.
How'd you get through it back in 2009?
Perseverance, I would say, really. Perseverance. I had some great opportunities for jobs that fell through, that didn't. Great interviews. I interviewed for the Oprah Winfrey Show. I interviewed to represent Katie Couric when she was coming to CBS News she was taking over the CBS Evening News. Mm-hmm. I had 10 crazy interviews for that job. And I knew all along that there was a possibility they wouldn't pick me. And that's something we all have to deal with because as much PR experience that I had, I didn't have news.
And I've been doing this for a long time. And I have to say that it feels crushing when you go through a long process like that. There are a lot of companies that put you through the ringer with very long processes, and you really get connected to the company and to the people, and you feel really good, and you're putting yourself there, and then it doesn't come through, and it is crushing. And it can feel just the negative feelings during this time can just be very overwhelming. But I can say that I've talked to countless people through these different times. And what I found is every time I touch base with these people a little bit in the future, they've all ended up exactly where they're supposed to be. And sometimes it might have been a little bit of a divide, a veer. And sometimes it's going straight forward, but they're happy and they're where they're supposed to be. And so that's what I try to tell people is that when we're going through these difficult times, they are really hard, but just what you said, perseverance. If you just make it through, you'll end up exactly where you're supposed to be. Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Did you end up somewhere that made you happy after the 2009?
On Location Tours, when I saw that job listing, TV and movie tour company, it was right up my alley. I love television and movies. It was the smallest place I worked, so it was a learning curve in that respect. Like you said, I worked for Disney, I worked for Procter and Gamble, and then at a shop that had maybe 8 full-time employees. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot different. But I spent 9.5 years there.
What did you learn from going from a large company experience to a smaller company experience?
Patience. Definitely, there's some patience you have to learn. You just learn that things are done differently. And also, my first job was a paper route at 13. I have never been shy to work. And when you are at a small company, you all have to take part in making that company succeed. If I have to get on the floor and stuff an envelope, I started there, hired to do PR and marketing. And when I left, I was doing PR, marketing, sales, and operations. Mm-hmm. Basically, besides the owner, I was running the company, helping her to run the company.
So you really expanded your skill set within that role too.
I actually had gone to my boss to talk about sales because she had let our sales team go at one time. They weren't producing. She wasn't happy, but we didn't fill those roles for a long time. And when you're a company based in the sales you make, I went and said, would be willing to learn this, but I think we need to have somebody doing it. And it was great to learn that when I spent the last 3 years adding that to my resume and traveling the world to sales shows and trade shows and different.
Now, are there any specific habits that you've adopted throughout the years that help you with your own success?
It's interesting. I'm a people person. I can go up to anybody and talk to them. The one thing I haven't learned to do well for myself and in looking for a new job is the networking part of that.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy, is it?
Yeah, I guess it's because I'm asking for help myself rather than I'm offering my help to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is always easier to offer help than to ask for help. But asking for help, this is what I've learned, because this is my problem as well. I've had a struggle with asking for help, still do. But doing this podcast has actually helped me a great deal, because talking to people, I've learned that if you ask for help, that actually gives the other person the opportunity to give you that help, which makes them feel good. And it gives you the opportunity, when you ask for help, it actually increases the connection between you two. And so it helps with your relationship and the feel good, the feel good feeling that you get when you help someone actually brings a lot more joy into life. And so what I learned from listening to other podcast guests is that I should ask for help, because it allows other people to have more joy in their life, and it allows them to have those feel good feelings. And when they do that for me, that helps improve our relationship. And then you're so wanting to go pay it forward whenever someone does help you and that type of thing. Especially if you are someone who has a hard time asking for help. This is what I've been learning.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, because I think of the Locher Room and what I created, because when I initially created it, my initial idea was to do something on Instagram. For the reason, it was the day before As the World Turns' television anniversary. Oh. As the PR guy, I knew in my head that April 2nd of 2020 was As the World Turns' anniversary. So I thought, As the World Turns has been off the air for 10 years. Guiding Light's been off the air for 10 years. Maybe people who were stuck home during the early part of the pandemic might enjoy to see some familiar faces on Instagram. And one of the first actors I called suggested I do it on a streaming platform because we could include more people. At the time, Instagram was only allowing one-on-one interviews on Instagram Live. Because of all of the Zooms and everything else, they have expanded that. But I didn't, like I said, I wanted to do it to cheer people up. I didn't know to what extent it was making an impact. And like you said, that's a great feeling. Like I have heard from many people how I helped a very dark time for many. And that I would be lying if I said that doesn't feel good.
It helps carry you through.
Yeah. And help me carry, through. And that was the other thing. I was thinking of those fans who might be disconnected from family at that time, stuck at home because we were all stuck at home. What I didn't think of were the actors per se would enjoy seeing each other's faces as well and reconnecting because they haven't worked with each other in over 10 years. And then the people behind the scenes who used to work on the show, it was another way for them at a time when we were all looking for a connection to feel connected.
Yeah, what a gift. Oh, I love that. From everything that you've worked on with the Locher Room, what have been some of your biggest takeaways?
With the Locher Room, I know that the daytime audience is what grew the Locher Room. It was their love of daytime television that expanded my show to grow. I have like almost 14,000 subscribers. I've had over 1.5 million views with all the shows. You had mentioned in your intro about conversations with Alan. When Charlottesville happened and people were screaming, Jews will not replace us, I just thought of my parents who were no longer alive. And as a child of Holocaust survivors, I wanted to do something, but that was, I think, 2017. I didn't have the Locher Room. I didn't have a platform, but I deep inside me wanted to do something. And then thought about it in November, December, and talked to some guests. And one of those guests is a woman named Mindy Corporon. She lost her 14-year-old son and father to a neo-Nazi who wanted to know what it felt like to kill Jewish people.
Oh my gosh.
And we were on the phone talking about why I wanted her on my show. She's a cousin of somebody I knew. And my basic idea was to do one show to have this conversation, to just remind people that anti-Semitism still existed. And her immediate response to me was, why would you do one show? You have a platform.
Wise lady. Mm-hmm.
Wise lady. And talk about a wise lady. To go through the tragedy she did. She just released her memoir about this experience called Healing a Shattered Soul, for anybody who is listening to this. She is an inspiration. She continues to inspire me because I don't know how you get through that kind of thing. But conversations with Alan, and when George Floyd passed and all of that, it wasn't just, my initial idea was about anti-Semitism. And then it became about racism. And my idea was about Black people and racism because that's what we were seeing in the news. And then it was Asian hate. We're all connected. And I'm gay and Jewish. So I get it tenfold sometimes. So it's been incredible to do. I've done about, I think, 7 or 8 of those conversations with Alan. And I wish those shows would get the viewership that the daytime shows get. Now, granted, they do. And I do hear from fans who say, thank you for doing these, or thank you for introducing us to this, or speaking about these issues because they are important. But it's the other thing I'm proud of about the whole Locher Room experience is when I just shared those numbers with you, that's all been me doing every aspect of producing a 1-hour show for over a year.
Which is a lot of work.
A lot of work. You watch Jimmy Fallon or Stephen Colbert, or like I started on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. There's not one person producing. It's a team of 200 people putting on the talk shows we all watch. So
now, through your experience working with these companies, did you learn how to do a lot of these things through just being there? Or did you teach all of this stuff over this past year?
I've taught all myself over this past year. I really had never streamed before. I had to figure out, I used StreamYard. I had to figure out that they were really helpful at the beginning. I was talking to someone who was like, she was loving what I was doing. She's like, you should brand that. And I have a great friend who created the logo, my friend Paul. He's an advertising exec, owns his own agency. And I said, when my friend said to brand it, I called Paul. I thought, oh, an advertising agency, he should do it. He should come up with the name. It's what he does. But that night, I sat down next to my husband on the couch, and for some reason, the Locher Room popped in my head, and I said it, and that was it.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, anybody I've said has had your reaction, which I appreciate. And that's, I know they're looking down, but that's sad. My parents could be alive to see this.
Oh, me too.
And not only that, what I put my parents through, what we all put our parents through when we're young, and you love someone on television. I grew up watching Charlie's Angels, and Jacqueline Smith was my childhood everything. And she agreed to sit down with me.
Great.
And I think my intro was basically, if my mother and father could hear me say these words, please welcome Jacqueline Smith to the Locher Room.
Oh, I love it.
Now,
people say that you shouldn't meet your hero. How was it meeting Jacqueline Smith?
It was incredible.
Wonderful. Oh, I
Yeah, it was
remember.
incredible. And that's perseverance for you, because when I started the show, I didn't think of doing anything really outside daytime. I actually only thought to do As the World Turns and Guiding Light because those were my connections. Those were the two shows I worked on. And because like I said to you, daytime fans were so connected, they just started writing me saying, please do this show. Please do that show. Then I got Susan Lucci, who I didn't know, I didn't work with. She said yes. And then the channel just grew. And I had reached out to Jacqueline Smith's team early on. They said no. I tried again a few months later and they said yes.
Nice. I love it. And that's a lesson right there.
Yeah. And I'll even say this because I've started to say this. The one thing for my mother, who is a Holocaust survivor who didn't have an education past high school, the one thing she always taught me is, ask the question. All they can say is no.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you what that was like to grow up with two parents who were Holocaust survivors and you being first generation yourself. It's a lot. What was that like?
It is a lot. I have to say, I was bar mitzvahed. We were what I would say semi-religious. My mother definitely liked us to observe the high holidays. I knew they were Holocaust survivors, but it really wasn't until I was in my mid-20s. Schindler's List had just come out, and there's one moment in that movie where there's a young girl in a red coat.
Yes.
Who's like really young, like what I would say my mother's age. My mother is aged 3 to 8 years old during World War II. Mm-hmm. And that hit me like that. Seeing that young girl was like seeing my mother right there. And in 1994, my oldest nephew, firstborn nephew, was born. And from the New Jersey hospital, my mother went to a payphone and called the daughter of the people who saved her life. Because they had always been friends. I knew who this woman was, like they would write letters, but they basically, from the hospital, she called because they were the same age during the war. And my mother lived with them on a farm for 2 years. And her mother lived with them there. Hiding. My grandmother was hidden basically 100% of the time. My mother, because of her complexion, passed as their cousin and went to church, went to school with them. But that family, who is still apart, and I did a show sharing my mother's story on Conversations with Alan. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed the daughters of that woman she called. Wow. But that family risked 11 lives to save 2 people. They had 9 children, and their 17-year-old son, this lesson is for anybody watching, but this 17-year-old son asked his parents to take my mother and grandmother in.
Wow.
And they did. And without that decision, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. No, and you asked me what, it really took me a long time, but that is such a powerful thing. And it's interesting because those 2 gals, who are family to me, who I interviewed, they said they didn't really, as well, like they didn't realize the impact until me and my sister basically always showed gratitude, because it is without that decision,
all of these people, yes,
a whole line of people would not be here.
Isn't that amazing?
And all these experiences we just talked about would never have happened for me personally.
No.
Yeah.
All because of the decision of
one family,
a compassionate 17-year-old and a family that made a very difficult decision because it was the right one. And that
it is. But we do talk about, my sister says, none of us would know what we would say until you're put in that. Exactly. But we hope we would choose the same direction they did.
Exactly. We don't know. And so I have so much admiration for those people, and so much gratitude for people such as that in our world. So I thank you for
There's an interesting saying that I learned through this process of learning about my family story. It's in the Talmud, and we honored this family because if somebody saved your life during World War II and they were not paid, then they did it out of the goodness of their heart, like this family. Mm-hmm. The Yad Vashem in Jerusalem will honor that family with an inscription of their name on a wall at the museum for the country that they saved these people's lives.
That's beautiful. And
they give them a medal. And there's a quote from the Talmud that says, "He who saves a life saves the world."
That gave me chills. I love that. Yeah. And let that be a lesson to all of us that even though we're not in a situation right now, thank the Lord and thank everything that we're not. The small decisions we make can have very big impacts on other people's lives. Yeah.
Completely. So we went off course. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Good course.
Okay.
There's important things to talk about there. So well, I'm curious, is there anything that you've learned in life through work, through personal experiences that you have found served you the most? And you feel like if there's someone who's struggling out there right now, this advice could potentially help move them a little bit closer to their own success or their own comfort?
I would say to ask. The worst you can get is no. Vocalize what you want. I'm learning that now through the process of looking for my job, and use the tools you have to your advantage. We can't wait for the door to open. We have to push the door open to get there. And we can get there at any age.
At any age. I completely agree. It's the limitations that are the problem, not the age.
Right. And we talked about this off camera, but I'm getting a little anxiety because I am looking for work, can create anxiety in all of us. But there are ways to get through that. Talk to people, vocalize, and I have to learn it as well. I ask for help.
Yeah. How do you push through times of struggle? Is there anything that you do that helps you?
The pandemic was certainly a struggle when we started it. And the locker room was definitely for me a helpful tool. Being able to devote energy to something that made so many other people happy was a really blessing for me, as well as I've heard has been for the people watching. I'm learning every day doing it. I wish there were more hours in a day so I could learn more, because I think there's ways to expand it. And in some respects, I wish I could make it a full-time job, because you were saying you've done so many of these podcasts. I loved working on Regis and Kathy Lee. I loved watching them do what they did, and they did it so well. But wow, just talking to people is such an experience in and of itself, and what we can learn from others if we are able to just listen and respond. It's powerful.
It's very powerful. It's pretty incredible. Right?
I'm sure. Think about all the people I'm sure all of the things you've learned. You said I've done almost 170 shows, talked to people from all walks of life. That's the thing. I've had authors, I've had actors from primetime movies, daytime, all of it, and talking about real life.
It sits with you. Like you said, you started this to help people. You wanted to bring a smile to their face, bring connection. And what you found was you got connection, and it brought a smile to your face, and you've been learning, and it's been fulfilling you in ways that you needed. And I found the same experience when I started this podcast. I started it to bring comfort to people who are struggling, to talk about how other people have gone through their own struggles, and maybe hopefully bring some inspiration to others. And that was why I did this. And I have found that I am blown away by how much this process has helped me, and how much I've grown through listening to all of these stories and just carrying them around in my own heart. And it's been an amazing experience. And so it goes to, that's a common theme through most of these podcasts too, is when people start to look to help others and focus on that over how can I help myself, things start to happen. Whenever you help others, you're really helping yourself is what it comes down to.
I never imagined when I made that first phone call on April 1st, that 14 months later, I would still be doing the show.
Yeah. No,
Or the fact that I could say I have a show.
right?
I
And
mean,
500 interviews. That's a lot.
yeah, I never could have imagined that.
Now, you
Yeah.
said you would love to make this permanent. What's stopping you?
Nothing at the moment. No, nothing's. I would love to make it something that would provide me a salary that I definitely, if I get a job in PR, could do this at the same time. You are doing it
Yes.
right
Yeah.
now. Correct. Yeah. Right now, I've tried to do a little less, but I was doing almost 3 shows a week.
That's a lot.
Which is a lot. Yeah. Booking them, researching them, hosting them,
whole production.
the whole gamut of it. But yes, I could do something once a week. Yeah, for sure. It was never my intent that it would go this long. It's like Field of Dreams. If you build it, it will come. And you're building this. I've built the Locher Room. We are doing it. It's just a matter of what can I turn it into. I love talking to people. I love introducing people to different topics, movies, actors. When we watch an interview show, you get 3 to 5 minutes of somebody, basically. So if I'm doing a show on a movie and that cast or 1 actor to 5 actors from a soap, they're usually with me for an hour. Mm-hmm. So you really are learning a lot more about their time on that soap, that movie, about the book that they wrote, and their path, where I think it's just a larger opportunity for people to learn in general. You have to be interested in these topics. But that's another feedback I get is I get people who are daytime fans who never watched the shows that my guests might be from. I'll get Days of Our Lives fans watching something about All My Children, and they're like, oh my God, I never knew who that actor was. What a great conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot to be gotten from all conversations if you're really listening.
If you're really listening, and that's, Jolie, that's the fascinating thing. I did not realize what we could all learn from conversations if we just listened. Mm-hmm. I think our country would be in a different place if we could all, and I'm not perfect. I'm on different sides with many people and need to find that way to listen to some of them. But I do believe conversations this is how I almost end the conversations with Alan. I truly believe conversations like this can change our world. Mm-hmm. That's how I basically end that series every time I air it, because I do.
Yeah.
I think if it changes one person's perspective about race,
it's a win, a huge win. I completely agree. It's all about that. If you can help one person, just make a difference with one person, and that's a big win on life all around.
We all could use a win. Everybody deserves a win.
Everyone deserves a win. And listening is really big. And it's a really big thing in life overall. And it's a really big thing in interviews too. And like you said, in conversation, so often we're not listening. We all suffer from the planning what you're going to say next while the person's talking. Majority of people are guilty of doing this. But if you can just be aware of that and shut it down, it really is magical when you can be right there. And when you're interviewing, as far as interview tips go, that's actually one of the bigger mistakes that people make when they go in an interview. They have all these things, particularly people who are senior level, because they have so much experience and so many different things that they want to come across in the interview process, that when a hiring manager is talking or asking a question, they're thinking about all these things. They're not really listening. And so one of the things that I hear over and over again with senior level people is hiring managers will ask a question and the person will talk for 10, 15 minutes and never really answer the question because they didn't listen to the question.
You just gave me so much hope, because listening is a skill as well. Oh, and that's some great feedback I feel I have received from doing this, that people believe I'm a great listener. And I'd like to believe that. I do know I haven't always been that. I'm sure I have not always been that great listener.
Everybody has. No, everyone has not been a great listener.
Yeah, your mind starts going in different places. But because I'm sitting here, you and I are focused on each other and listening. And that, I think, has helped as well. There's no distraction of, I don't have an audience. You don't know, it's you and I. And when I'm doing a show, it's me and whoever those guests are. But that just hearing you say that just stuck with me to remember that I need to use the skill I'm using in the locker room when I go out on that next job interview
Yeah.
and listen rather
Yes.
than not answer the question.
Yes. Yeah. No, that happens a lot.
So thank you. That's a great piece of advice for me.
Hopefully that helps some people out there.
Well,
because
I
really,
think
we have so much, there's so much we want to say. There's so much experience we have. And really, and especially if you're excited about something, you just really want that to come forth. And so sometimes that overshadows the other person. And so this is the feedback I get often. But moving forward, before we wrap up, there's a couple things I wanted to ask. Being a big movie fan yourself, and maybe it's a movie or a talk or a video, but is there anything that you've watched, listened to that had a really big impact on your life that you think others could benefit from?
I don't know necessarily. Dead Poets Society was one of those movies I worked and yeah, and that Carpe Diem, seize the day, is something that has always stuck with me. I don't know that I've always followed that. We do have in our basement a little rug that has Carpe Diem on it. It was my husband's. I forget who gave it to him, but we have it, and I love it because it reminds me of that. But something like that in terms of
Thank you.
I watch so much television and movies, but that had an impact.
It really had an impact on me, and I have not watched that with my kids. I'm going to remedy that. So thank you for bringing that up.
How old are your kids?
16 and 13. It's time.
Oh, it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
And I think it's still, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I think it still holds up.
Yeah. I remember that being very impactful to me as a teenager. So yes, that one's coming out. All right. My last question. One of my favorite questions. You always get something interesting. What are you sure of in life?
Family, my husband.
Nice. I like that. Family is vital.
Yeah. And I think we all learned that in this past year.
Yeah.
You know,
and family doesn't mean blood.
Correct. 100%. That was wow. You were reading my mind because that is exactly what I was going to say. It is, but it can also, I have both. And that's a blessing.
Yes, that is very much a blessing. Alan, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, is there anything we didn't discuss or anything that you want to tell people about what you're doing for them to come check out? I will have your website on the show notes for them to go check it out.
Perfect.
There are so many great takeaways from Alan's story. First, he got his initial break into the industry because someone overheard him talking about what he wanted to do. This woman listened and was willing to help somebody else, a stranger, getting him a job as a page that eventually led to Regis and Kathy Lee, Disney, and more. There are two things happening here that are so important. The first is the power of putting words to your wants. Giving voice to what you want and giving life to your dreams is the first step to getting where you want to be. I'm not saying that someone will pop up magically just because you open your mouth, but if you don't say anything, then it is a guarantee that nothing will happen. You never know what will come from a conversation. Even a helpful piece of advice can help you find the right avenue. Talk about what you want to do. Talk about your wishes and your dreams with others, and you just never know where synergy will pop up. Second, the woman who listened. There is so much power in that moment, stopping to listen to somebody else, their hopes and their wants, and then actually opening a door for that person because you can. That woman likely has no idea the level of impact she had on Alan's life and others because of that one decision to help. We are all this woman. We all have the power to listen to those around us and open a door whenever we have the ability to do so. I hope we all think about Alan's story and moving forward, actively look for ways we can lend somebody a hand to help lift them up. A simple act on your part can have a huge impact on another person's life. And this is on the simple end of the spectrum. We learned the ever-rippling impact one person can have with the story of his grandmother during World War II. The power and impact of that family and countless others who risked their lives to save other people in that war and many, many others will never be fully understood. I am so grateful for each and every one of these people. They are shining examples of humanity. It is an incredible thing to ponder, and it inspires me to look at my choices in a new way. I hope it does the same for you too. Alan talked about the gift of working with great people and being able to absorb information from them, learning from all of the amazing minds. This is a big key to success. Learning from those who go before you, gaining their wisdom so that you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over. Ask questions. Learn from the people before. I love how Alan was intrigued with the soaps he grew up watching with his mother. He had a curiosity about how it was all done, so he would go to where they were taping and he would learn from the people there. How is it produced? What do the different jobs do? This is a great technique to do with anything that is piquing your interest. Go where your interest is. Go where those people gather. Talk to anyone involved and learn as much as you can about what they are doing and how. This will give you a clear idea if the direction is right for you to pursue. And if it is, you will learn all kinds of best practices from the people you talk to. Alan eventually landed the role working on these 2 shows that he had so much curiosity about, and because of his networking, he knew so many of the players involved when he began, and he easily slid in, making an impact. I can only imagine how that has continued to benefit him even now, so many years later, as he's producing The Locher Room. I appreciated that Alan shared his strengths as well as areas he's learning to grow. Alan admitted that while he's great with people, he's great at connecting with people, he isn't as great at the asking for help or networking on behalf of himself. This is so normal. A huge percentage of the population struggles with this very problem. I know I struggle with it myself. It is hard asking for help for yourself. There are a lot of psychological reasons why this is hard for so many of us. We think we should be able to handle it. We don't want to come off needy or weak. We think it has to be really bad to ask for help. We have a hard time surrendering control. We don't want to put someone else out. We are afraid of being rejected, or we plain just don't know who to ask. There are so many reasons why, but regardless of your particular reason why it's hard to ask for help, I would suggest you consider reaching out and asking for whatever help you need. This is a practice that you can develop. And here's why you want to. As I mentioned before, asking for help develops more significant relationships. It makes you feel more connected. It improves resilience. It grows your circle of people who make you feel good and furthers your development. Giving help allows the giver to feel good about giving. Receiving help allows the receiver to feel grateful and good about the world in general, resulting in a pay-it-forward attitude. Getting that said help will make you progress better and faster and When you reach out and ask for help, you give permission to others around you to do the same. When you think of the many residual gifts that result from finally reaching out and asking for that help, doesn't it make you want to finally take that step? One could almost say it's selfish not to. As Alan's mom said, always ask the question. All they can say is no. What difficulty have you been dealing with? What goal have you been struggling to reach? Who can you connect with to ask for help today? I hope you will consider asking the question. Alan shared that he, like countless others, were affected in the downturn of 2009 and during this most recent pandemic. He admits that it is not easy going through that process, but you must stay strong with perseverance to make it through. This is the absolute truth. You have to keep plugging away, never giving up, and continually going after what you really want. Alan ended up finding a role that encompassed TV and movies, the two areas of his previous expertise. He also got the opportunity to work in a new, smaller type of environment, which expanded his skill set and gave him additional know-how on how to excel in a small organization. He can now prove effectively that he can shine in any type of surrounding and choose which situation he likes best to go after for his next role. Alan may not be sure what his next full-time role will be, but I can guarantee you if we revisit Alan in another 30 years in the future, he will be able to give me his story, and we will be able to see how each experience aligned to lead him to where he needed to be. If you are feeling a little frustration or concern about where you are right now, remember you are only currently encompassing a tiny blip on the radar of your full story. You are unable to see the full picture yet, but one day you will see. They say this too shall pass because this too will pass. You will find your right next fit. What Alan did during the pandemic was brilliant. Well, this was something he did to bring joy and help light up others during a time when we were all feeling a little lost and alone. He also did something that is very smart to do when you are not employed with a full-time job. If you have not been working for a length of time, you should start consulting or creating something or volunteering or having some kind of project that uses the skill set you want to be using in your next job. This keeps you sharp, on your game. It gives you needed purpose during a difficult time, and it will come off as much more impressive to potential employers. You want to have something to talk about. You do not want to be left with nothing to say for the months you've been out of work. Give away your services for free if you need to, but I suggest you do something and have an accomplishment to share and talk about from your time out of employment. It can make a huge difference in landing you that right next role. Alan started the Locher Room to bring that joy and ended up taking the project farther than he ever expected. He helped bring that needed connection to so very many people, and in so doing, learned that universal secret that when we set out to help others, that is when we truly end up helping ourselves. The joy, the connection, the learning, the good feelings. They came back to Alan tenfold. He even got to meet his childhood hero. This gift he set out to give others keeps giving back to him, and who knows where it could lead for Alan in the future. I am grateful that not only is Alan facilitating joy through Daytime Fans, but he is also tackling those important topics of racism, anti-Semitism, and hate on his show Conversations with Alan. We need more conversations such as these, and as Alan shared, we need more people listening to each other. There is so much we can learn by listening, and so much that can be healed when we truly hear. Honest, open, curious conversations with ears wide open, truly listening with an intent to understand can change the world. So let's pay attention to how well we've been listening. In your next conversations, try focusing completely on what the other person is saying and see where the conversation goes when you stop worrying about how you should respond or what you're going to say next. See what happens. I would wager the other person walks away feeling really good about you because they felt heard. Before I wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought for people currently unemployed and looking for employment. This process of finding that right next thing, it can be really hard. If you do not have work while you are looking for work, it has a tendency to strip away layers of confidence the longer it lasts. This is very normal. This is very human, and it happens to so many people. If you are going through this, know that you are not alone. I have been doing this for a long time, and I know that you will find the right next thing. What I ask you to be mindful of is that many people will internalize this difficult process, and that feeling down feeling, it will come across in an interview, and it will have a negative influence on your mindset and your subsequent life outcomes without you even realizing it. It makes an unwanted impact on everyone who experiences it. It's a natural cycle that causes havoc to large percentages of professionals during difficult times. I want you to know that this is normal. I want you to be very kind to yourself while going through this process. And I also want you to proactively work to counteract any negative feelings that are growing. In order to put yourself in the right headspace for moving forward, I would like you to do an exercise tonight. Remind yourself of how truly amazing you are. You are an unrepeatable miracle. Revel in all of the things that you have done well over the years and spend time today making that list. Think about all of the things that you've already learned, all of the experiences that have been powerful in your life. Think about that special spark that you bring to the day. Think about all of your strengths, all of those things that make you, you. Think about all of the problems you have solved, all of the goals you have reached, all of the people you have helped through the years. Feel in your bones all the special things that you bring to the table. Recognize your accomplishments, your ability to adapt, and all that you have pulled off to get yourself here, alive in this moment. And then write them down so you can remind yourself every time you need a boost of your own internal power. I want you to soak in that feel-good energy and bring it to every interview or project moving forward. You are sitting on a winning lottery ticket, and that winning lottery ticket is you. Seize every day. Claim who you are. Choose to show up in the moment. You will have a massive impact on this world, and you will give permission for others to do the same. And that is my wish for us all, that you show up and cash in on your own personal winning lottery ticket. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a like and sharing with a friend. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.